Further delay, let's get to the reason why you're joining us today and jump right in.
Hello, this is Robert Kiyosaki, and I'm here doing this very, very special presentation for our Rich Dad Coaching. And the reason I'm doing this is because so many people are scared stiff, or they're sitting at home, and while I feel horrible for the, if there is 20% unemployment coming up because of this coronavirus, it's horrible, because I've been broke, I've been home, Kim and I have been homeless, Kim and I've had no money, no income, no savings, nothing. But yet that was back in 1984, and it was the best thing that ever happened to us because we got smarter, we prepared for this time. So right now, instead of panicking, well, I just say, I already panicked. I panicked back in 1984. So this is what you can do. And the most important thing you can do is your most important asset is your mind. And the reason most people are in trouble financially is they went to school. They had people like my poor dad who said, go to school, get a job, work hard, save money, invest for a long-term, a well-diversified portfolio of stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, and get a pension. Well, that's the reason people are in trouble is they followed my poor dad's advice. So today we have a very important program for you, and the program is why this coronavirus, the problem with the coronavirus is going to accelerate a bigger problem. And the biggest problem coming down the pike now, it's upon us today, is this pension crisis. It's much, much bigger and more pervasive than the coronavirus. You see, we can heal ourselves, if we don't die, of course, from the coronavirus, but this pension crisis is going to wipe us all out. And it's a global problem, just much exactly like the coronavirus is a global problem. So I'm here to talk about my latest book. It's called Who Stole My Pension? And on the program with me is my co-author, Ted Siddell. Ted is a former SEC attorney, and he's seen the workings of this corruption in the pensions from the inside and out. He knows this stuff. He's the #1 whistleblower, and he takes on these big Wall Street firms who are ripping all of us off, just like they ripped us off back in 2008 with the subprime mortgage crisis. The problem with this pension crisis, it's attacking the old guys, just like coronavirus. If you're young, coronavirus hurts you, but not as bad as the old guys. This pension crisis is like the coronavirus. It's going to get the old guys bad. So I'm going to tell you about why it's worse than ever before. That, like I was just talking to another friend of mine. He said he was playing tennis in Waikiki. And he's a stock picker. And he goes, hey, what stock should I pick? What stock should I pick? And he looks at him and says, hey, don't you know? This is not a time to be picking stocks. He says, we're probably heading into a depression. And he agrees with me. The problem is our pension system. So anyway, it's a very important program. Most important is why you listen to this thing is maybe you be proactive and take action now rather than later. And I'll remind you, your greatest asset is your brain or your mind, if you have one. But your mind and your brain could also be your greatest liability, especially listen to my poor dad, which was go to school, get a job, save money, get out of debt, and get a pension. Those are the guys that are in trouble. So we have total of three, myself, Edward Ted Siddell, and we're going to bring you live and in person a person who has been screwed in the pension crisis. You see, if I had followed my poor dad's footsteps, I had to be screwed. Also, I would have been screwed because when I came back from the Vietnam War, I could have gone and flown for United Airlines as a pilot. If I had flown for United Airlines, I'd be handling baggage today or, looking for a job someplace else because our pensions, the pilot union pensions were ripped off. And most people don't know that. So it's a very important problem, and we're probably heading into a depression. Now, for some, I hope not, but it might be. For some people, it's the worst of times, but if you're prepared and you educate your mind, it'd be the best of times. because there's going to be a lot of bargains, lots of bargains. Ferraris, Lamborghinis, Rolls Royces, houses, stocks. There's going to be a lot of bargains, but you're just not going to jump in and buy stuff. So anyway, I'm very happy that you're listening to this program. I'm happy to be working with Rich Dad's coaching on this subject. So I'd like to introduce my co-author on this project, Edward Ted Siddell, the SEC attorney. He's been a whistleblower for years. And I'm very happy to be my co-author in Who Stole My Pension. Ted focuses on defined benefit pensions, and defined benefit pensions are the ones my poor dad had. You know, school teachers, firefighters, police officers, and labor unions. And Ted Siddell's expert on that, and I'm more on the 401k, the IRA side. So Ted, welcome to the program, and what do you have to say to all these people listening to this about the pension crisis?
Well, thanks, Robert. What we say in the book is that we're on in the early stages of the greatest retirement crisis in the history of this country and even the world, because we're having globally about 2 billion people are soon going to be above the age of 65. And the good news is that people are living longer than ever. The bad news is that only like the smallest minority of that 2 billion group have adequate savings to survive decades, potentially 30 years or more in retirement. So that's the story behind the book, Who Stole My Pension? But of course now we've got the coronavirus, which is having a devastating impact on the stock markets and will have a devastating impact on pensions. And pensions were already in danger. The average state and local pension in the United States was only 70% funded at the end of the 11-year historic bull market last week or so. With this 30% drop in the market, they're going to be even worse funded. And I recently wrote an article in Forbes called "Coronavirus Could Kill Your Pension." So we're in a much worse situation. We wrote the book about the dire pension crisis before the coronavirus hit. And now things, of course, are much worse.
So, you know, just edification to everybody else. If I had followed my poor dad's advice and got a job flying for United, probably making about $400,000, $500,000 a year with a pension, what happened to the pilots' union pension?
Well, the pilots' union, United Airlines was the largest pension failure in the history of this country back in about 2006. So United turned over all 6 or 7 of its pensions to the federal government. And the pension benefits were capped at a very low rate. And of course, the group that was looking to get, slated to get, or promised the greatest pensions were the pilots, because they were getting much more money. The flight attendants were never going to get. The flight attendants might have gotten $40,000 a year. The pilots might have gotten $120,000 a year as a pension benefit. But once the government took over the pension, everybody's benefit was slashed down to around that $40,000 a year level. And of course, we'll hear from Mark Green, who's a 30-year UPS truck driver on this show. And his pension went from, I think, $4,000 or $5,000 a month to $900 a month. So pension benefits get cut dramatically if the federal government takes over, and the most highly compensated people who would be expecting the biggest pensions get whacked the most.
And I'm sorry, I hate to admit this, but I went to my Vietnam pilots reunion, and I was talking to my friends who are pilots for United and Eastern and TWA and all this. They're all unemployed driving Uber today. You know, so it's quite an enormous downfall, you know, from flying the 747 to driving an Uber car. You know what I mean? And that's what's getting worse. So with that, I thought we'd get some reality on it, and we've invited. And so we wrote "Who Stole My Pension" long before, you know, the coronavirus hit. And now it's going to get worse. That's our opinion on it. That's a global crisis, as these pensions cannot meet their promises paid, to pensioners. So if I could bring on, would you introduce Mark Green for us? And he's part of the Who Stole My Pension book. Would you introduce him, Ted, please? Mark.
Yeah, Mark Green is a participant in the New York State Teamsters pension fund, and he contacted me a few years ago when his pension was slated to be taken over by the federal government. He and the other people in the pension wanted answers. They wanted to know what caused their pension, which only 2 years earlier had told them in newsletters that all the money was there to pay their pension benefits fully, not to worry. Suddenly, 2 years later, the money's gone. So Mark wanted an explanation, and his membership wanted an explanation. One of my mantras is, Robert, as you know, every dead pension deserves an autopsy.
Wait, say that again. Every dead pension deserves an autopsy. That's
right.
What you got called in for, the autopsy.
Yeah, so Mark and his group wanted answers. What caused this pension that was supposedly, fully funded within 2 years to suddenly run out of money? And so with that, let me introduce Mark Green, who is a 30-year UPS driver.
Thanks for having me.
So, UPS drivers are smarter than the average driver, aren't they?
I don't know about that. I mean, we work more hours than the average person, but
yeah.
It's a distressing time. You compare it to the United Airline pilots, right? We're highly compensated.
Yeah.
We expected a higher pension because of the compensation level, and here we are, just a pittance of what we were promised. So it's a difficult time, and that's before coronavirus, right?
Right.
So, we have a lot to talk about. There's a lot of worried people out there, and I think we could have fixed this sooner if we had better regulatory checks and balances put in place. So, I mean, that's a part of the discussion we're having here with Ted and you and other people is what led us to this point. How could an employer who put in $500,000 on my behalf for my pension, right? That should be equivalent to $9,000 a month pension, right? So now I'm $900 a month. Isn't that something, right? What happened there? And that's before coronavirus. We were talking this subject matter a month ago or 2 months ago. So can you imagine where we are now, right? So I think that's ongoing discussion of what went wrong and how we're going to pick up the pieces after this. As the pension time bomb has exploded, we're waiting for everything to crumble right now. This is going to be the second Great Depression, as you said. I agree with you. So we're just going to have to figure out how we come together and use our minds to come out of this. That's
right.
The best asset we have.
So give us a little bit of your background. You're still a relatively young man and all this, but when did you start driving for UPS, and then what did they tell you? And then when did you realize that you've been lied to or your pension was stolen? When did you realize that?
So I started in 1989. The paperwork I received in the mail was you work for 30 years and you're out. That's an N out clause, they call it. Doesn't matter what your age was. I only committed to 30 years. So my 30 years was last year, right, in 2019. Right. I was supposed to leave with a $5,400 a month pension, and then I was going to run our family farm. That's where I'm supposed to be today, running our family farm.
Where do you live?
Upstate New York.
Okay.
Yeah. So in 2010, we started receiving letters in the mail that the pension fund was in trouble. We were 62% funded. A law had been passed requiring trustees of a multi-employer pension plan to put in place a funding improvement plan. We were supposed to be 84% funded within 10 years. Okay. So we're in 2020, right? And we are around 37% funded. Okay. So the funding improvement plan did not work. The guidelines set out in the funding improvement plan did not work. So all these people, all these workers like myself were taking pay cuts, wage deferrals, low accrual rates on future benefit promises for naught. So 2016 comes, just to backtrack just a little bit, they said, look, the funding improvement plan is not working. We have to take further cuts. That's when we said enough is enough. Okay, we have to get some intervention here. I found Ted, who's become a friend of mine, basically. I mean, Ted, right? We have hundreds of hours on this. And we said, what the hell is going on here, basically? They've promised us our fund was going to be 84% funded within 10 years. And here we are, 37% funded. We've given up all our wages from our take-home pay. And so we hired Ted to do a forensic investigation. And, we found some things that were disturbing. Long story short, we should have been 90% funded now. We could have withstood this coronavirus situation or an expected downturn in the markets like we all expect. Every 10 years is going to be a recession, right? We know that as investors, right? We cannot handle this fallout. This fund will not make it. That I'm part of, the New York State Teamster Fund. So we should have been 90% funded. We went into this crisis 40, 50% funded. And it's a shame. It's a disaster for us. And there's probably millions of other people out there experiencing this with us. So,
well, that's why, Ted's a former SEC attorney, and I'll let him. So you guys raised some funds to hire him, and he came in and went after the UPS Teamster Union. So if I may ask Ted, when you came in, what did you find?
Well, what I found was I put it in the title of my report, which was called Trifecta of Imprudence. And what I found was that as the pension was heading towards collapse, three things happened. Transparency plummeted, the fees they were paying to Wall Street skyrocketed, and the risks they were taking in the highest cost, highest risk investments ever devised by Wall Street increased dramatically. So three things happened, all of which made the problem much worse. And what Mark was saying was they came up with a plan to rehabilitate this pension years ago. And these were the supposed best minds on Wall Street. All these guys got paid a lot of money. And every time, one of the things I always tell people is when I do a forensic investigation, there's never been a pension that failed that didn't have a room full of hired experts saying it would. So that's what Mark and who paid for those experts? Mark. The workers paid for those experts. Wall Street experts came in and said, we can fix this. And here's how we do it. Pay us more money, let us operate in secrecy, and let us go to Vegas gambling. And that's what they did. And the big gamble failed miserably. So now if we have a 30% fall in the market, I think Mark was saying the pension's only 30% funded now. So a 30% decline in the market will devastate, clean this fund out.
So if I could ask Mark again, Mark, when you guys, what did they say to you when they brought these experts in? I mean, did you smell a rat, or did you feel confident, or what was the process after they brought the experts from Wall Street in?
So in 2010, we formed a committee. We were not a legal entity at that point, like a nonprofit, but we formed our own committees. I would love to read out of a newsletter what they wrote. We got famous from day one, our group, because they sent us out to the news, to 34,000 families, this newsletter, and they didn't mention us by name, but they mentioned us as sort of troublemakers. You know, it said, while the New York State Fund faces these challenges, there are some who set it as an opportunity to criticize the fund or for their own purposes try to scare participants. This is unfortunate and misguided. Now, that was in 2013. That was us. That was my group in 2013. We were trying to warn people, set up town hall meetings that what they're telling us is a bunch of BS, okay? We knew that the fund needed 14% investment return just at break even. So in other words, they were paying out $280 million in benefits, taking in maybe $100 million in contributions. That's a shortfall of a lot of money. So we needed 14%, but they were telling people, hey, we're going to hit 14% year after year after year for the next 20 years. We knew that was BS, okay? We knew the actuaries were setting assumptions way too high, 8.5%, which is off the charts ridiculous. Who can hit 8.5% every single year, right? And that's when the real fight began. And I think we were 3 years into that, or 4 years into that, and we hired Ted. And we sent that trifecta of imprudence, our investigation, to the Treasury, the U.S. Department of Treasury, who had to authorize the cuts in upstate New York. They didn't seem to care too much, honestly. They just said, well, we have no money in Treasury to bail you out. There was no legislation to bail you out, and we're just going to roll what the trustees say, and we have to cut benefits by 30 to 50%. Okay? So I'm just telling the audience right now, I'll tell you, Rob, we're not done with this. Okay? We have every intention of taking legal action against our employer, the union, to pull us out of this multi-employer plan. We do not have to accept, you know, the way this is unfolding. The employer can pay the unfunded liability. They can pull us out of this. So that's sort of the legal angle we're going to take right now. And we've notified UPS that we're going to take legal action to pull ourselves out of this plan. But 10 years is long enough. That's the bottom line. 10 years of fighting this is long enough. They've had 10 years to pull this fund around. And we do not want to be part of a mismanaged pension plan any longer. So there you go. We'll have to see what happens with the coronavirus and all this other stuff. But we have challenges ahead, right?
So Ted, thank you, Mark. But by the way, Mark, how many members are in your union?
In the union, that's part of the New York State Teamsters pension plan, 34,000.
So Ted, first of all, as we wrote about it, who stole my pension, this is a global crisis, right? And that's what you found out because this is what you do.
Yeah, it's a global crisis, and it's you know, one of the things that when I was researching part of the book was I was surprised to learn that we are not even, the United States is not even at the top, on the top 25 list of countries with the greatest elderly population. So there are other countries like Japan and Italy and Australia and most of Europe have much greater elderly population than we do here in the United States, which of course will also impact the coronavirus issue because there's so many more elderly people over there. But so pensions all over the world are struggling to meet promises they made to older workers, over 65-year-olds who are, you know, headed towards retirement. And the other thing that we note in the book is that many of them are poised to just now begin investing in toxic assets that were made in America, made on Wall Street. We are the premier, America's the premier financial innovator. We are also the premier creator of toxic investments. So investments that we've created in this country, Wall Street has created, like hedge funds, hedge fund of funds, private equity funds. These are all high risk, high cost, highly secretive investments. They are now, for the first time, being bought up by the Japanese, Australians. And so these toxic investments that have proven to be so devastating to struggling American pensions, that were sold to American pensions as being the solution to their underfunding, are now being bought overseas, and it's going to be bad. It's going to be an bad outcome for all these overseas pensions as well.
For the world, you know.
Yeah.
So as we say on the back cover, Who Stole My Pension? What's America's #1 export? And it's toxic assets, all these pensions. It's the same thing that brought down the stock market or the real estate market in 2007, 2008. It was things called derivatives. And what Buffett calls weapons of financial mass destruction, we're still producing them. And when we add coronavirus to this whole thing, these weapons are going off even faster. So, so let me ask, Mark, so what are you doing now, given that you're supposed to be retired, but they've cut your pension? What options what actions are you taking now besides going after the union and going after employer like UPS?
So this is a changing game. It's all evolving. We were put in lockdown in New York State.
Well, this is for the coronavirus.
Because of the coronavirus, yeah. There's a lot of people panicking. I get, obviously, I have a lot of connections. I have a lot of contacts that are looking for leadership. They're looking for direction. They're scared. And so I have to be stoic and sort of give some guidance where we're going to go with this. People have an awareness that their pension is gone right now, okay? That's just one issue. Just the pension is one issue. Now there's just a survival issue, because if you don't go out to work, you can't buy basic necessities. It's like something we haven't seen in this country ever, okay? So I'm telling people, keep their cool. We'll get through this in 30 to 90 days, more like 90 probably. And there's going to be, I think, a renaissance. I think there's going to be a great revival after that. By then, the pension fund will still be desecrated, but we're going to have to use our minds. We're going to have to get off our couches, get off of social media, because if all these pension plans go bankrupt, it's going to affect the economy for the next 10 years, right?
Longer.
So we have to figure out a way where there's some sort of skin in the game with everybody, shared sacrifice, I'll call it. And the big banks are going to be part of that. Make my word. That's a message I'm going to be promoting in DC, that the big banks are going to have to put some skin in the game and help recapitalize these markets so we can, move on. So that's what I'm doing. I'm not going to DC in person anymore, in my lobbying efforts. It'll be through email, but I have great contacts down there. And my message, number one, is the big banks are going to have to help recapitalize these markets that have walked away with these trillions of dollars over the last X amount of years.
Thank you. Anyway, I feel for you, and I thank you for sharing your story. So Ted, what advice do you have for people who might be in Mark's position?
Well, again, I get back to that mantra that every dead or dying pension deserves an autopsy. And so if in the last 11 years, the greatest bull market in history, pensions benefits were not increased, pensions did not become more solvent, it is extremely likely that in the near future, as pensions lose a lot of money in the stock market, that there will be additional benefit cuts. By the way, since the 2008 recession, half of all state and local pensions in the United States have cut benefits, even during the greatest bull market in history. So now that we're looking at pensions and the market taking a huge hit, there's going to be further benefit cuts. But what I would tell people is to get prepared and start looking closely at your pension now, because guaranteed there's going to be bad news in the next year or two as the returns start coming in. So we talk about in the book, if you can, go to meetings of your pension board, look at the financial statements, look at the performance reports. One of the things we talk about in the book, Who Stole My Pension, is every pension lies about its investment performance. Every pension claims to be above average. Well, just watch what happens post-coronavirus. Every one of these damn pensions is going to claim they did just great. So we lay out the common ruses, lies that these pensions make, and scams that Wall Street perpetrates on pensions, how they loot pensions. So this is the stuff you need to know now, because you're about to hear about some of the greatest lies ever told in the next year, as these pensions try to explain why losing 30% was really good, okay? And you're going to hear, and all the fees, they say, well, we paid massive fees to Wall Street, the highest fees we ever paid in our lives, but we lost 30%, and that's just terrific. Couldn't have gone better. So that's what I'd say is read the book now, because like state and local pensions generally work on a fiscal year basis. So after June 30th, you know, reports will start coming out about how these pensions have done. So get ready now for a battle you're going to be fighting soon, because it's inevitable that if pensions did terribly in the biggest bull market in history, in the greatest depression or recession of the last, whatever, 10, 15 years, they'll do even worse.
So, and you specialize in defined benefits and unions and those types of plans. How does somebody hire somebody like you to so-called represent them? I mean, what do you recommend?
Well, what we've done in the past is we've done investigations that have been crowdfunded over the internet, where each participant in the pension maybe contributes $50 to $100. So it can be done through crowdfunding over the internet, or in Mark's case, there was a group already formed that was communicating with each other. Some of these groups are on Facebook. So it can be crowdfunded over the internet, or it can be funded through word of mouth, through organizations like Mark's organization for his pension.
But the funny thing is, didn't Facebook ban you?
Yeah.
Why is Facebook against you, or the book?
I don't know. They never provided an explanation. But one of the things I learned since we wrote the book was that there are hundreds, if not thousands, of Facebook groups dedicated to, let's say, retiree groups like AT&T retirees, IBM retirees, Caterpillar retirees. And then there are also all these groups dedicated to Teamsters retirees and to state and local pension. There's Iowa and Nebraska Protect Our Pensions. That's a Facebook group. So I went to join them, and after joining a couple, all of a sudden Facebook shut me down. They said that I would not be allowed to join any of these groups. And they have they tell you this in a little window on your computer, and it says, click here if you want to appeal. So I appealed, never heard what happened. After 10 days, the block or censorship ended, but I was never told why I had been blocked. Apparently, someone complained about the message of the book, which is that, you know, pensions are being looted. So it's very strange.
And like our buddy, the Seattle Times, he trashed me in the book and all that. You know, they're all financial planners too.
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of these Facebook groups, company management sneaks into the group, moles for the company. So it can be that people at the union or people at the company didn't like what was being talked about on these groups. And then they report it to Facebook, and Facebook, whatever, has some process that they respond by blocking people.
So the last question is this: you know, the stock market is a stock market. It funds both defined benefits, teaches firefighters and police officers and unions. but it also funds 401ks. Are 401ks and IRAs, are they safe? Are they any better off?
No, 401ks and IRAs have a lot of structural problems. First of all, they have generally retail mutual funds in them. So these are high cost retail products that shouldn't belong in a retirement plan at all. And the employer gets to pick the quote unquote menu. So the employee only gets to pick the best from the bad bunch that the employer has chosen for him. So there are a lot of problems with 401ks, and the premise is that every employee can be an astute stock picker, and that just can't happen. I mean, there are a very limited number of us who can scour the financial markets, read financial statements, and pick stocks. So that's why some of the investment programs you advocate, like rental property, can be a much easier way to invest, because you can understand it, you can control it, you can see it, whatever. But the big premise of flaw of 401ks is that every American will someday become an astute portfolio manager.
So anyway, and what was the average dollar amount in a 401k in America?
The average 401k for like a 65-year-old is like $50,000 to $60,000. So the great 401k experiment did not work. People can't retire on $50,000, $60,000. Right. But that's what has happened over the last 30, 40 years. So if that's a good outcome, then the 401k program was a success. But it's not a good outcome, and so people are basically left with Social Security. So that's
pre-coronavirus too.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you can knock 30% off that today, and hopefully it won't get any worse than that. Right. But as of today, yes.
So in closing, people say, well, how come there's two authors, Ted Siddell and Robert Kiyosaki? Well, two reasons is because Ted represents defined benefits, teaches firefighters and police officers. And I represent the independent 401k IRAs and all this, and this is global. But there's something else that drives Ted and I to be in this business on pensions, and it goes back to our fathers. So what is the story of your father and pensions and Social Security and all that?
Yeah, well, my father worked in the CIA back in the 1970s, and he disappeared when I was 17 years old, and he was in his early 40s in East Africa, and so it was ultimately discovered that he had been captured and tortured and murdered by Idi Amin, the brutal dictator of Uganda, who killed, I think, close to 500,000 of his own people. But so my father never was able to get a pension, and even his Social Security and probating his will and his life insurance wouldn't pay because his body couldn't be found for 2 years. So it was a real lesson to me that I realized at a very early age I was going to have to take control and responsibility for my own financial well-being, because even the best of plans can be destroyed with one horrific event.
Right. And for those who have read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, my story is when I came back from Vietnam in '73, my poor dad, PhD and all this, was unemployed. And he didn't have a pension, no paycheck. And although a PhD, he wasn't prepared for the real world. And yet he kept telling me to go back to school and then get my master's, my PhD, and then fly for the airlines for United, which thank God I didn't, because I'd be driving Uber with my fellow squadron mates. But one of the reasons I took my own financial retirement into my own hands was simply I don't trust the government. I don't trust them. and I don't trust Wall Street, and I don't have a pension. My wife and I don't have pensions, and we invest in our financial education. So really, that's why Ted and I are co-authors in this book called Who Stole My Pension? So in closing, I want to thank Mark Green, for telling his real life story. It's going on today, not in the past. And all of you, I want to thank Rich Dad's Coaching for supporting this, because your greatest asset is your brain. But if you went to school, they told you to give your money to Wall Street or the banks, or save money into printing money. I mean, that makes no sense at all. So I would say this much: your greatest asset is your brain, your mind, and your time, what you do with your time. But your brain and your mind and your time are your biggest liability if you're just sitting at home hoping coronavirus clears up, because there's a bigger crisis coming right on the heels of coronavirus, and that's our global pension crisis. So I thank you all. Thank you, Ted. Thank you, Mark. And thank you, Rich Dad's Coaching, for helping support this program. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow, that was incredible. What a powerful event. Now let's talk about how you, the viewer, can leverage the information and take advantage of a great opportunity from Rich Dad. Robert Kiyosaki has agreed to join me for this upcoming segment. It's designed to help you take action from today's learnings. Now, Robert, I'm going to give you just a minute to get settled in so we can share an exciting opportunity with our viewers. But first, let me say it's truly a great honor for me to get to speak with you today. Now, for our viewers, I hope you're feeling motivated to take your next step. Whether you're looking to become an entrepreneur or an investor for the first time, or perhaps you're ready to take it up a notch and do bigger and more profitable deals. Either way, we're here to support you. Okay, and remember, as promised, Robert's going to stick around and answer your questions and share his advice to help you take your next step. Speaking of your next step, let's start there first. Robert and I both have complete confidence in your ability to do this. The reason? Because amateurs don't seek out financial education. Professionals do. And by showing up here today to seek out this education, you've already shown that you're ready to become a pro at this. Since you're here, what we're about to share with you is an exclusive opportunity for you, and it's designed to change your financial future and begin immediately increasing your monthly cash flow. You've already heard some powerful information today, but now it's your time to consider, what are you going to do with it? Hopefully today, you've seen how simple success can be if you just follow the path of those who have already done what you're trying to do. Learn what they did. Repeat what they did. It's much easier and faster to achieve results. So you can take what you've learned today and end up miles ahead of what most people achieve financially in their entire lifetime. I took action myself 20 years ago with no experience and no blueprint. I had only read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, but I knew it was possible. You don't need to waste your time, energy, and hard-earned money the way I did. You can virtually eliminate your risks and finally get out of the rat race in a fraction of the time it took me. 20 years ago, I wish I had what Robert and his team are going to offer you today. An exclusive invitation to secure your financial freedom and exit the rat race by implementing Robert's Real Estate Cash Flow Blueprint. This first-of-its-kind online training system will walk you through the exact steps to acquire at least one cash flow producing property in the next year, and then repeat the process again and again. If you're serious about finally getting out of the rat race, if you want a reliable, proven financial education that can make your financial freedom attainable faster than you ever thought possible, if you want to guarantee yourself a raise of at least $6,000 every single year, and if you want to take all of the risky guesswork out of increasing your cash flow, then the Real Estate Cash Flow Blueprint is specifically for you. In order to fulfill Robert's mission to elevate the financial well-being of humanity, he worked with his team to develop an innovative, step-by-step system that lays out exactly what to do to achieve financial independence with real estate. It's literally a blueprint for building a bridge to financial freedom the Rich Dad way. After you've gone through this step-by-step system, you'll know exactly how to buy your first or your next investment property with positive cash flow, with little or none of your own money guaranteed. The teaching and training material you'll have access to in the Real Estate Cash Flow Blueprint has already made such a massive difference in so many people's lives. That's because it's the same material Robert and his experts have used for years. They've used it to help people achieve financial freedom the rich dad way. Take Lisa, for example. She started like I did. She picked up the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad and had her eyes opened. She had to really work to get her husband on board at first because this was such a big change for them. But they knew they had to do something different because they had such big expenses and no true assets. But now their passive income has surpassed their expenses. Here's what Lisa had to say. We're proud to say we reached our goal of acquiring passive income over expenses in our own personal lives. This was no easy task since we had lots of expenses and no true assets. However, with the knowledge that the Rich Dad team offers, which is massive, a little patience, persistence, and minding our business, we were able to achieve this in a few short years. Lisa R., Tennessee. Wow, I still can't help but get excited when I hear results like that. And the Real Estate Cash Flow Blueprint is going to make them attainable for you too. This system comes to you with 7 comprehensive sessions you can access anytime, where Robert's personally trained real estate experts walk you through every profit-making strategy you need to know. They'll show you step-by-step how to achieve real wealth with real estate. Even if you have little or no money, no experience, and you have a full-time job, let me quickly show you what you're going to learn in each module. In module number 1, Think Like the Rich. You'll learn how to leverage not only your own money, but more importantly, other people's money to unlock true wealth. You'll start to think like the rich think and seize opportunities that are right in your backyard, just like the rich do. In module number 2, Taking Control of Your Cash Flow, you'll learn how simple it is to finally take back control of your cash flow and establish your plan, be secure, and live life on your terms. Module number 3 is where you're going to learn how you can do this no matter what your schedule is, whether you have a demanding full-time job or you're an extremely busy parent. It's called Making Time for Success. And by the end, you'll be leveraging your personal time like the rich manage theirs, so you can get the highest returns on the time you do have available. In module number 4, Identifying Your Target Market, we'll give you the tips, tricks, and secrets to locate properties with the most profit potential. So you're not going to have to worry about where to look or how to know if a property has great potential or not. We're going to show you exactly what to look for and what to avoid. Of course, finding the right market and properties is only half the equation. That's why in module number 5, Finding Properties That Cash Flow, we'll show you how to find motivated sellers and maximize your cash flow, so you don't have to waste your time chasing unprofitable deals. After doing this over and over again all over the world, we know the specific traits to look for in a seller in order to get unbelievable value out of your deal. So this really gives you an unfair advantage in every potential deal you find. In module number 6, Showing You the Money, you'll learn how you can acquire almost any deal using creative financing techniques to purchase properties with little or no down payment. And ultimately, in module number 7, Doing Your First Deal, you're going to see step-by-step how to establish connections and negotiate your deals for maximum cash flow. As you watch these sessions, Robert's experts will walk you through everything you need to quickly start acquiring cash flow producing properties. You're also going to have instant access to Robert's step-by-step real estate cash flow curriculum, which includes in-depth exercises and training materials. This will allow you to map out your exact plan of action, so you'll have a completely unique blueprint designed the Rich Dad way for your specific market and your financial situation. So, immediately after you join today, you're going to receive an email from the Rich Dad team giving you instant access to the entire real estate cash flow blueprint system. Inside our secure, members-only site, you'll have immediate access to the highest quality training material we believe exists on the market today. And you'll also get every update that we implement as time goes on. So you can keep coming back to this again and again to help you acquire even more assets. You're getting the exact system Robert's developed to help people acquire their first property without the fear and pitfalls that hold most would-be investors back. Start generating positive cash flow and
Dạo
passive
này em
income
quảng cáo về
within
khóa
just a
học anh
few
Dũng
months
rồi.
of getting started. Eliminate the easily avoidable but all too common mistakes
chắc là
that
hôm nay
cost
chỉ có thế
amateur
thôi.
investors thousands of dollars and endless stress. Becoming financially free
Đó.
so you can stop worrying and live the life you've always
Hết rồi
wanted.
đấy.
Maybe that
Bây giờ là
means
quảng cáo khóa
taking
học
that
thôi.
dream vacation with your family. Or maybe it means eventually walking away from your 9-to-5 job so you can have the flexibility to spend more time with the people that matter most while pursuing your passion. It's all put together for you as if Robert's team of experts were standing right beside you. Show
Buổi này nó giống như là một buổi tổng quan.
Cái não bộ của mình và tư duy của mình thôi. Và hãy đi học về giáo dục tài chính. Còn có một cái đoạn nữa là về đầu tư bất động sản. Đầu tư bất động sản thì chúng ta nên chọn được cái thời điểm đầu tư tốt nhất cho bất động sản để có thể nó sẽ là một cái cơ hội tốt để giúp chúng ta giàu lên rất là nhiều trong khủng hoảng. Và cái thời điểm như thế nào thì nó sẽ có ở trong những cái khóa học của thầy, sau đó thầy giới thiệu khóa học á. Đó.
Thời điểm là năm 2020 khi ADA lên 1 đô nhé.
Thực ra ấy thì là cái này kết hợp với một số cái mà em đã đọc rồi, thì mọi người có thể đọc ở trong cái quyển mà Lời tiên tri của người cho giàu ấy. Thì ông đấy cũng nói rất là rõ về cái tình hình khủng hoảng những cái năm trước như thế nào, và cái cuộc khủng hoảng này nó cũng tương tự như thế thôi, nhưng mà nó sẽ có cái quy mô và lớn hơn rất là nhiều. Và với khủng hoảng này thì nó mang tính toàn cầu luôn. Đấy, và nó lại còn kết hợp với bệnh dịch nữa thì nó sẽ rất là kinh khủng. Và cái chắc chắn là cái quỹ hưu trí những người mà bây giờ chuẩn bị về hưu á, thì mà những người về hưu rồi sẽ không có lương hưu đâu.
Rồi. Như ở Việt Nam thì nó là cái bảo hiểm xã hội đấy em.
Đúng
Bảo
rồi,
hiểm
nó chính là bảo hiểm xã hội đó. Thì ở Mỹ nó là quỹ hưu trí.
Đúng rồi.
Lương hưu 401 đấy. Đấy. Thì cái này là một kịch bản nó đã được sắp sẵn rồi, chứ không phải là tự nhiên đâu. Có nghĩa là nó đi theo chu kỳ ấy, chu kỳ kinh tế ấy. Đến cái lúc mà nó phải giải phóng tất cả những cái quỹ như thế. Đó, và
đã đọc cái cuốn sách Chiến tranh tiền tệ ấy, thì họ nói là cái thế giới này được điều hành bởi cái top 5% đấy mà. Họ biết chính xác lúc nào sẽ khủng hoảng và lúc nào sẽ là giai đoạn kết thúc. Và họ đều gọi là trực chờ sẵn để mua giá trị tài sản giảm đi gấp khoảng 10 lần so với cả giá trị thực tế của tài sản trong những lúc khủng hoảng. Thì khủng hoảng là một cái cuộc dịch chuyển dòng tiền và khiến người giàu càng giàu hơn và người nghèo càng nghèo đi mà. Như bây giờ Warren Buffett, bây giờ ông ấy với quỹ đầu tư đang có sẵn tiền mặt khoảng hơn 100 tỷ đô để mua các tài sản thanh lý này.
Đúng rồi. Đợt trước em cũng có nghe nói Warren Buffett, ông ấy giữ rất nhiều tiền mặt luôn ấy, trong mấy năm liền ấy, chỉ để đến những cái đợt